Hi, it's Jim, N4BFR. It is Sunday, the 27th of September, 2020. We're almost through September. Here's your COVID-19 update for the weekend, as well as for the week that was, as well as a look back at some of the interesting data I found by analyzing our spike over the last 20 weeks or so. So stay tuned because there's a lot of good info I think you'll find interesting as we get into the presentation. But first, the daily headlines. And the daily report came in, for the last few days, it's really be coming in roughly where we expected, a general downward trend. It's not a particularly fast downward trend, but new cases and tests are both coming in at a beneficial rate. We did have a rare sub 1,000 case day today. 812 cases reported in Georgia, so that's a real benefit. And we also saw tests stay the same. So tests were flat, which means that percentage of new cases per test came down. It's 6.1% on the 7-day average. It was 5.8% today. So we are seeing testing stay relatively flat in the 18 to 20,000 a day range, while cases are coming down, which means that percentage of new cases is coming down. That's good. That's getting us out of the, we're already out of the red. It's getting us out of the yellow and hopefully into the green in the next few weeks, months, probably more like months than weeks, at least to get the cases per 1,000 down. But we'll go through that a little bit when we get into that spike analysis. New hospitalizations were good, typically on trend. Deaths, we had a little early week peak there that threw off the weekly trend a little bit. I'll show you that in a second. And active hospitalizations continue to trigger and drop down a couple of points every day. So we're down under 13,000 now. We were down under 1,000 in early June. At the rate we're going down, only losing, maybe we lost 1,000 this week. I'd have to look at the exact number. But at the rate we're going down, probably another 3 to 4 weeks before we get under 1,000, unless we see something dramatically happen there. Looking at the Ccu reports, CCUs have been, I don't want to say completely quiet, but running relatively flat at about 81% capacity. There hasn't been a lot of severe changes up and down there. We'll see every day, we'll see one or two regions spike up above 90% for a day or two and then drop back down. So, for example, region N had been spiking up for a couple of days, and now it fell back down below 90%. Region H spiked up today. Region L has been on that list a little bit longer, but these are moving in and out. I do like, you see over on the right, that new color-coded chart that the state puts out for the regional capacity. That is, so the darker the splotch there, the closer to 100% capacity utilization is. So you'll see, for instance, region L is the brownest at this point, and that's indicating they are the closest to capacity. So overall, CCU fairly quiet over the last few days. Nothing significant to speak of. When we look at the weekly data, we saw in 3 of the cases, that's tests, hospitalizations, and cases, that we're on a typical downward trend. So there have been some bumps in the road. 2 weeks ago, tests fell off more than expected. It normalized last week, and now we're kind of on that same trajectory down for tests. So it's staying about the same, and like I said, 14,000 tests a week, so roughly 2,000 a day, and we're hanging in there. For cases, 8,500 this week, so that puts us at about 1,200 a day. That is down off last week, which was up a little bit, but we know that testing cases had some bad data thrown in because of some pent-up data that folks provided in one of the regional hospital areas. And I think I saw that there may be one more hospital area that we may see this from, but I haven't seen any updates on that yet. So we'll play that as we come to it, as they say. From a hospitalization perspective, down 248, which is last week we were up 246. So we just basically traded off week over week a few data. That just could be some late reports. It could have been that backlog. It just, no telling exactly what it is, but overall our trend is staying roughly downward, and that is good. The place where we're not seeing the downward trend stay is in deaths, and unfortunately, we had deaths pick up to 344 this week. Now, that's up. Let me look at my numbers so I don't misquote myself here. We started the week at about 40 a day, 39 a day as a 7-day average. We actually moved up to 50 a day during the week, and we had a couple of days that spiked up. Don't know if that was a backlog of cases or exactly where that issue came up, but the net is more deaths this week than last week. Overall, I think you see the declining trend. It's not declining as fast as we would like to see the case trend, and I think we'll have to see if this week or next week washes it out. It does feel like it's similar to the case trend, just a few weeks delayed from that, and I'll show you that here as I get into the analysis of the spike. So overall, from a daily perspective, from a weekly perspective, we're doing good. We're trending the right way. Deaths were a little question mark this week, but we'll keep our eye on them going forward and see if there's any changes there. So let me move on and talk about a new analysis that I've done that looks at cases and get to the right mouse here. So I'm going to move on, and I'm going to talk about a new analysis I've done that gets to look at how we spent the summer from a trend perspective on cases and on deaths. And I think I'll give away the ending here at the beginning. If it feels like it took us longer to spike up than it did to go down, you're right. And you'll see exactly that in both of these case trends, which I think could be useful as we're seeing future trends happen. So let's talk about that as we go through the data. Here we go. So let's start off with a look at the Georgia summer spike. What you see here is the activity through 9/27. That is all the data as of today. That shows us where we were. It's the same chart I just showed a couple minutes ago on the weekly. The difference here is I've added some expectations of the trend continuing down, so we can take a look at this on a total spike surge, whatever you want to call it, perspective. And I think all of this starts by looking at the timeliness of things that happened in our events here in Georgia. And the first one was our shelter in place. Started April 2nd. We saw trends starting to go up, but they didn't spike, right? We took that, we sheltered in place, and we kept the line low. So as you look further out, now let's look at shelter in place ends May 1st. We've kept the line fairly flat. We get to Memorial Day, May 25th. We've kept the line fairly flat. But then in the next 2 weeks, if you take a look at that, we've gone from 4146 up to 7,000. So we have almost doubled in 3 weeks' time. Then the bottom drops out. And we hit the 4th of July, and we're already spiking cases. Now, 2 weeks beyond that, we hit our main peak. And we end up with 26,000 new cases of coronavirus in Georgia just in a single week. So that's where the big thing came in. Now, good news for Labor Day. While we did see a little spike the week after Labor Day, it was more due to a data reporting issue than a transference issue. So we're not seeing the spread there that we might think we saw. Let me go on to the next slide. And these slides are going to build here over the next couple of minutes as I tell a story. So, same chart. All I did here was add a baseline. And what I said was, where can we say this was kind of normal how Georgia is acting for COVID-19? And where can we say we have a trend that has moved up and changed direction? So what I did is I picked the week of 6/14. So through June 14th, I said we are in a normal average COVID-19 scenario. And we have kept the cases between under 6,000 during that time. And so if I average out these weeks, I'm seeing a weekly case average of 5,003. So that's where, in order to normalize and coming out the back end of this, what do we say is back to normal? Well, I think it's a case average around 5,000. And if you look at how I've built the trend out, we're seeing a decline of, call it 9%, 8%, 9% a week in new cases. So if you play that out by the end of October, we should be at about where we were when we came into mid-June. So I'm calling that area above the 5,000 line between the week of June 21st and the week of 10/25, the spike window. And so anything above the line here, I'm going to attribute to the spike in cases because of Memorial Day and 4th of July, and show what the difference is between those two periods. So if we say that that is the spike window, here's what the numbers look like. We were in a spike window for 19 weeks. We can, say, hey, maybe the trend is 9.5%, and so it's 18 weeks, or it's, 8%, and it's 20 weeks. It will be somewhere in the 19-week range as far as how long we were spiking. So we've got about 4 more weeks to go in this current surge. It took us 5 weeks to go from 5,000 to 25,000 cases a week. That is the growth rate. So that grew at, the growth rate that we were growing at 4,000 cases a week over that first 5-week period that took us through July 19th. So that 85,000 new cases in that period. We grew at a rate of 4,000 a week, but then we started to come down. But because we had so many people infected, we didn't nearly come down as fast as we went up. So it's taken us, or will take us, about 14 weeks to get back to that 5,000 case a week level that we were seeing in May and June, and really from April to June. So that's a decline rate of 1,500 a week on average, if you take out the whole from peak to when we get below 5,000. So a lot more cases actually come in this part of the window. In the currently spiking up window, we had 85,000 cases over expected. But in the long tail to get to the end of the window, we actually more than doubled that again by having to work through all these infections that have been present and are taking time to go back down. So at the end of the day, we're going to say we had about 300,000 incremental COVID-19 cases because of the spike that we had that was driven by Memorial Day and Labor and 4th of July being within 5 or 6 weeks of each other. Now I want to play that out for a second. If we hang around in this 5,000-ish scenario, we're not social distancing as much as we were. people are starting to go to football games and have parties and those kind of things. It seems realistically that we will hang out in this area in October and early November unless something materially changes that. We're not really seeing a peak from post Labor Day. Maybe we'll see more of a peak from back to school as schools start to bring more kids in. But for right now, the trend is down. But think forward now. We're at a case of 5,000 a day, or 5,000 a week. We get to Thanksgiving. A lot of families are going to say, let's take the chance. Let's get together. Let's bring grandma and grandpa in. We haven't seen them for 9 months because we've all been locked up since April. So let's go ahead and do it. That has the potential to be a super spreader event. Build upon that, 5 weeks later is Christmas, plus Christmas shopping. I think we could definitely see this same scenario in the future as we go out towards 2021. Excuse me. So, likelihood to me is that weather's going to get worse. People are going to go inside more. We're going to get together for Thanksgiving. We're going to do Christmas shopping. We're going to watch football. And we're going to see this continue to go up over time. Sorry about that. So prediction would be, if we look at this and saw the 5-week impact of 4th of July, Memorial Day and 4th of July, I think there's a very likely possibility that as we're creeping up towards Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year, we could see another super spreader event start to happen in this scenario. My prediction based on that. So I don't know if I'm going to go to Vegas and bet a lot of money on it, but I can see the factors coming into play that would show this continuing to grow. Let's move on to the death data. This one's a little more cloudy for me. A couple of reasons why. A, because it's not as consistent go up, go down as we saw previously, and I think some of that in the cases, and I think some of that is because of the different demographics of people dying versus getting cases, as well as I think this tail is going to go out a little bit longer than 1025, but I wanted to kind of keep these two scales on the same time frame, so I picked 1025 to do that. And as on the last case, the off-color number of cases there in October are my trended estimates based on the decline we've seen since August 16th. And that's the other piece to look at here, is we actually have really only seen this spike in deaths since the end of July. So the week of July 26th is really when we saw the spike up. And we had been having some real beneficial weeks in early July. So that was when a lot of people were saying, hey, yeah, cases are spiking up, but people aren't dying. So we're not seeing that in the trends. And really what we've seen is there's a lag now, and I could put an exact number to it, but it really feels like it's 5 weeks from the peak of cases to peak of deaths in the window that we showed a minute ago. So average of 193 going in. The spike window had cases pretty much 300 and above per week. So the spike window is 10 weeks. And I'm going to say 10 weeks plus because I still think it's going to go out into November and closer to the end of November before we're going to be back down below 200 deaths a day or a week regularly based on the data we're seeing now. It took 4 weeks to peak versus 5 on the case side. And it's going to take at least 10 weeks to return. So I'm going to say it's a 14-week window now, and we're 10 weeks in, and I think we're going to have a few more weeks there. So We would have expected about 2,900 deaths. We ended up with 4,900 deaths, so that's an additional 2,000 or an increase of 65%. That growth rate was at 83 a week, or excuse me, 83 a week, but the decline rate was only 27 per week. So again, we saw this asymmetrical peak came faster than the decline is going away, and it's actually more of a 3-to-1 climb. So for every 1 week of growth, it's taking 3 weeks to decline back down, versus on the case side, for every 1 week of growth, it's taking about 2.5 weeks to decline. So the tail is longer here. The deaths are still to come, I think, in the spike that we're seeing now. And so we're going to probably run into a scenario where, as we get to the holidays, the deaths are going to be flattening out. But basically, as we, if we have a bad Thanksgiving and that becomes a super spreader event, we could, by Christmas, have another spike and have that continue on out into early 2021. So that will be interesting to see how that all works through. I don't really want to make this video last forever. I'm already over 20 minutes, so I'm going to stop the analysis here. But on Wednesday, when I do the next video, I'm going to take some of this data and try and compare it to a couple of the other states that may either have experienced this before or done some different things, and see if there's some different scenarios that we see as we compare ourselves to other cases. So that's it for now. Would love to hear comments on this analysis. You can go to coronavirus Reddit. You can see the link right there at the bottom. I'll leave a link in the description as well. There'll be a separate thread just to talk about this data. The data will be there if you want to analyze it yourself. I've got it in a separate spreadsheet. If you are the kind of person who says, give me the data and let me play with it for a little bit, I'm more than happy to do that as well. So one man's opinion, one man's analysis. Glad to hear what other thoughts are out there and what other things might happen. If, and I'll give you an example. Let's say we catch a lucky break and we get a vaccine that will at least help slow some of this down. That could be a win. That could change all the trajectory. Let's say we find a new way that excuse me, find a new way to treat this, and so that slows down hospitalizations, thereby slowing down deaths. Again, that's going to change the trajectory. So there's always going to be factors in here that change things going forward. There's a lot of what ifs in here, but what I at least tried to do is say, here's my view of how we came through it. Here's where I think the risk is going forward, at least the biggest risk based on what we've seen so far with COVID-19. And I'd really love to hear opinions and thoughts on that as we go forward. So thanks for watching. Watch for the update on Wednesday as I kind of give more information and answer some questions on this and get more background on how some other states have done. And we will talk to you then.